Chapter 1. The Snowstorm. William Goldstone was not the most sociable boy. He never seemed to have as many friends as the other children in his school, and as he wasn't really keen on sport, he spent most of his spare time watching videos and playing with his electronic games. His parents had decided to leave him with his grandfather for a week. As Grandfather Howard lived in a mountain cabin, they thought that William might find interest in the countryside rather than watching more TV. So Howard had taken him on several walks through the forest, and the two of them had spent many hours fishing in a nearby river, where William managed to catch a few fish. Snow had been falling for the past 2 days, and Howard helped his grandson build a family of snowmen. They were rather small because there hadn't been much snow. However, they would soon see a lot more. "Grandfather?" "What is it, William?" "What time will they get here?" "Well, if they left on time, I'd say around 7 o'clock. Mind you, the weather has become much worse." "How can it be worse? I think it's great. Anyway, I thought you liked the snow." "Of course I do, though not as much as I did when I was your age. Do you want to go outside and build another snowman?" "Not right now, and neither do you. It'll be getting dark soon, and a lot colder as well. But I'm leaving tomorrow, and we never see snow like this at home. Can't I build just one more?" "I'll tell you what, when your parents arrive, I'll suggest that you all stay here for the night. Then you can build your snowman in the morning when the snow has settled." "Great. With all the snow that's falling now, it'll be 10 times as big as the others." "So what do you want to do in the meantime, William?" "Let's see what's on TV." William turned on the TV and began watching one of his favorite series, while Howard stared out into the night, worried that his daughter and her husband might be caught in the snowstorm. All of a sudden, the TV picture disappeared and the lamplight faded, leaving the roaring log fire to continue making shadows by itself. William was very disappointed. Oh no! It was just getting to the most exciting part. It must be a power failure. Howard tried turning on some of the light switches and changing some fuses, but with no success. "Yes, the electricity's out completely. I think we can blame the snow for that." "So what do we do now?" "How about if I read you a story?" "Huh, Boredom City." "How can you say that when you don't even know what it's all about? Have today's children given up on books completely?" William wasn't exactly thrilled by the idea, but he couldn't think of another. "Okay, what is it about?" "Oh, it's a wonderful story, full of danger and adventure. Is there a really evil villain? The most evil one? And the hero? There's got to be a hero. Is he brave? Is he strong? Like no other man?" Howard, now happy and a little excited, went to his bookcase and produced a large, leather-bound book. On the cover was a symbol, a crescent moon, with a tiny circle of gold sparkling near the moon's lower point. The old man blew what looked like half an inch of dust from the top of the book's pages. "I've not read this for years." William and Howard sat before the fireplace. "What's the hero's name, Grandfather?" "A very familiar one. You'll recognize it straight away. Now, The story begins on a peaceful day, in a peaceful village, set deep within a distant, forgotten land. Howard opened the book and turned to the first page. Our hero, who at this time is a boy of about your age, is returning home with his father after a week of hunting. Chapter 2. Savage Visitors. Come along, Will. Adam Goldstone's face glowed with pride as he led his son out of the forest and down towards their village in the valley. Young Will was very excited. Just wait till Mother sees what I've caught. 7 rabbits. And the pheasant. Of course, the pheasant. Together with the deer around my shoulders, the animals in your sack will feed us for quite some time. Are you proud of me, Father? Adam stopped walking, turned to face Will, and placed a hand on his son's shoulder. Always. When they reached the village, Adam noticed something strange. There were more horses around than usual, and there was a lot of noise coming from the tavern where his wife worked. Just then, Adam saw his wife walking towards the tavern, her arms full of vegetables. Why the extra supplies, Liana? Darling, you're back. She put her load to one side, kissed her husband, then knelt down and held Will's face between her hands. And you, my little man, have you been learning well? Have a look in my sack. Oh my, I've never seen so many rabbits. Will's parents began whispering so as not to worry him. Liana, what about my question? We have visitors, Adam. I guessed as much, but who are they? King Dedraig and his men. Adam was surprised and angry. What are they doing here? They're on their way home from a battle, which, no doubt, they won. Of course. Pity. Few people liked King Dedraig. Those who did were sitting with him in the tavern. The soldiers fell on their food like wolves, made a lot of noise, and created an awful mess. General Siobhan, how many enemies did we kill today? Equal to that of all previous battles put together, Your Majesty. May all who oppose me shudder when they hear my name. May they scream when they learn its true meaning. Death, destruction, rage, agony, grief. But Father, I'm hungry. Why can't I eat with you in the tavern? Will, I'm not going there to eat. I'm going there to look after your mother. Why? Because King Dedraig is in there. I've heard stories about him. Then you must know why I'm concerned. After a brief silence, Adam smiled and stroked his son's fair hair. Don't you worry. That's my job. Everything will be fine once Dedraig has left. And then we'll cook your pheasant, all right? Will gave an unsure smile and nodded. Adam left the family hut, closed the door behind him, breathed in deeply, and set off towards the tavern. Liana was busy preparing more food for the warriors when her husband appeared in the doorway. Is everything okay, Liana? So far, so good. I'll be watching things from that table over there. Take this jug of ale. You'll look more relaxed. Evening turned to night without a problem in sight. Then it happened. Dedraig had been watching a beautiful young serving girl throughout the feast, and now, drunk on ale and his own importance, demanded the girl's company. That was when her fiancé spoke up. Keep your hands off her. The tavern was suddenly silent, with tension creeping from every corner. Who dares instruct me? I do. Why? Why should my pleasure concern you? Because that girl is engaged to me. Oh, I see. Well, young man, engagements can be broken. I think the lady should be given the chance to choose which of us she prefers. Didreg turned back to the girl who was now trembling. What is your name, dear? Ava. My name is Ava. Ava. Such a beautiful name. Well, Ava, it appears that your loveliness is the cause of competition between your brave fiancé and King Didreg. King Didreg, who is feared throughout the land, whose name is legendary, and who is certainly not known for backing away from a challenge. So, Ava, which one do you really prefer? Ava couldn't bear the thought of becoming Didreg's companion, but neither could she watch her fiancé be killed. After thinking long and hard, she slowly approached the dreaded king. Ava, what are you doing? I'm sorry. There you are, proof that engagements can indeed be broken. The young man picked up a large stone jug, raised it high in the air, and rushed towards Didreg. Asken heads! Absolutely! Didreg stood up and punched the young man's stomach. He then grabbed the jug and hit the youth's head with it. In an instant, he lay dead. Ava let out a deafening scream, and the villagers' anger grew. Without thinking of the odds, they advanced upon the king and his men. Adam was their leader. You unspeakable murderer, Didreg. That boy was not even half your age. My heart bleeds. Oh, I shall make sure of that. Adam picked up a carving knife, but before he could do anything, Siobhan grabbed him by the throat and began lifting him up off the ground. Fearing that her husband's neck would soon be broken, Liana rushed across the tavern, holding a bowl of hot broth which she poured into Siobhan's face. Having heard the noises from within the tavern, Will left the safety of the hut and crept towards a hole in the tavern wall. Looking through the hole, he saw that a great fight had now begun. Wherever he looked, chairs were being broken against men's backs, and as the sword and knife fight carried on in the candlelight, the straw-covered floor became more and more red from his neighbor's blood. He could no longer see his father, but he saw his mother, and as she struggled with the furious Siobhan, she caught sight of her son through the hole. Run, Will! But forget about us. Save yourself. Will couldn't do it at first. He had to at least try to help. But he soon realized that there was nothing he could do, so he ran off sobbing into the night. Some time later, Will found himself at the edge of the forest, exhausted. He turned and looked back down into the valley and saw that Dreg had set the village on fire. His parents, his home, everything he knew was now gone forever. Tears welled up in his eyes. They were not only tears of sadness and sorrow. They were the tears of a 10-year-old's rage. Chapter 3. Kylan the Wizard. The sun shone high in the sky, and it was very hot. Will wondered if the sun was angry at what had happened. Tired and hungry, he looked around for something to eat, but as he had already passed through the forest and was now in the middle of a barren, rocky plain, there seemed little chance of finding food anywhere. Suddenly, he caught sight of a tiny lizard. He was so hungry that he picked up a stone and aimed it at the creature. Then he realized that he would have to eat it raw, and he began to feel sick in the stomach. He became dizzy. The stone fell from his fingers, and he fainted. Lying on the gray, dusty ground, he soon fell into a deep and troubled sleep. The smell of smoke reminded Will of the burning village. He woke up with a scream, but soon found out where the smell was coming from, a blazing fire in the center of the cave in which he now lay. The cave seemed a nice place to be, and the hand that stroked his head was very comforting. Will turned and saw the man who had rescued him. He wore a long red robe and a thin band of gold around his bald head. As his face was covered with wrinkles, and as his small beard was completely white, it was clear that the man was very, very old. However, he spoke with the voice of someone many years younger. "Do you feel well enough to talk?" Will nodded, looking a little scared. "Who are you?" "You wouldn't be able to pronounce the name I was given when I was born. Most people call me Kylan. Although you're the first person I've actually met in over 50 years. Will had heard the man's name before. "Are you a wizard?" "Does it show?" "Well, I've heard many stories about you." "And what do these stories say?" "That you're the kindest, wisest, and most powerful magician in the whole world." Kylan was pleased. "It's nice to know that history is being recorded correctly. Now then, young man, what do I call you?" "Will. Will Goldstone." "How appropriate." "What did you say?" "Oh, nothing." A short while passed before Will asked, "How long have I been in your cave, Kylan?" "It's been 2 days now. You looked very sick when I found you, but thanks to some bathing and a bit of low-level magic, your bruises, cuts, and sunburn have almost faded away. Although, I don't think that mark on your chest will ever leave you. What can you tell me about it?" Will opened his sackcloth shirt and looked at the birthmark, a crescent moon and a tiny circle. "I've always had it. Do you know what it means?" "No, I'm afraid that I don't." Kylan was lying. As the night went on, Will told Kylan about all that had happened. The wizard said that Will could stay with him for as long as he liked. Will thought that the wizard had told him that out of sympathy. However, Kylan had realized how important Will was the moment he first saw the birthmark. He said no more about it. Neither did he invite Will to learn about his magic. Will would have to ask for that himself. The years went by, and Will's hatred of Dreg grew. He never spoke of it because he knew that Kylan didn't approve of revenge. However, Kylan also wanted to see Dreg killed. He wanted it to happen so that the world could once again be at peace. Will realized that he needed to find new talents within himself. He often saw Kylan practicing his magic, but this was something that could never be taught. What Kylan could teach him was how to focus his mind and spirit so that he could use his body to the full. So when Kylan forgot to block off the entrance to his training chamber, Will crept in to see what the wizard was up to. "I knew that passage must lead to another cave, but I would never have imagined that it would be so big." Thanks to the power of magic, the vast stone chamber was filled with grass, bushes, and trees. It was where Kylan got his food, and the place where he practiced his own special kind of martial arts. Will watched with amazement as Kylan, his eyes closed all the time, jumped, twirled, and sailed through the air. He leapt from branch to branch before flying head over heels towards the statue in the center of the chamber. It was a statue of Dazan, the sun god, and Kylan was now standing on its head with one foot. You landed on each of those branches for only an instant. You hardly even touched them. How can a man move with such speed and grace? Practice. If I could move like that. You can if you want to. With these skills, together with what your father taught you about hunting, you would be unstoppable. Will's breathing had become heavy with excitement. Teach me, please. Kylan smiled and opened his eyes. I would be glad to. Chapter 4. Delana Will sat beside the smoking remains of the previous night's fire. Kylan appeared carrying something wrapped in a piece of leather and sat down opposite the young man. He poured 2 cups of sweet red wine, one of which he passed to Will. He held the other high in the air. To Dazan. To the power of good. To Will Goldstone on his 25th birthday. They both sipped their wine. You've been so good to me, Kylan. And so I always shall, even though you will be far away from here by tonight. What do you mean? Will, you're a man now, a man of great power and skill. What's the use of things like those you've learnt in a cave so far from civilization? See the world, Will. Fulfill your destiny. My destiny? All men will know their destiny, some more than others. Yours is perhaps the most important in our history. What is my destiny? That I cannot tell you. Can't or won't? It will all come clear soon enough, and when it does, you will find it very much to your liking. That much I will tell you. There was a long silence. Will looked at Kylan with a smile and a tear. I wish we could always be together. Kylan passed Will the leather-bound present. And so we shall. Will unwrapped the gift. It was a shiny gold headband, just like the one Kylan wore. What's this? A symbol of all you've achieved here. Wear it always. It will keep us in mind of each other. Since leaving Kylan's cave, Will had spent 5 years traveling far and wide, through forests, through the wilderness, and had spent time in each village he found. He was now in the city of Galabus, which was of great interest to Will for 2 reasons. First of all, it was the biggest and busiest place that he had ever seen. More importantly, however, it was very near the dark fortress, King Dedraig's home and palace. It stood tall upon a nearby hill, casting a grim shadow across the city. Will planned to stay in Galabus for a while, to see what he could learn about the fortress, but right now, he needed food and some rest, so he made his way to the city's most popular tavern. Delana had come to live in Galabus when she was 7 years old. Her father, a carpenter, knew he could make more money in the city than he ever could back in their village. He planned to make a wealthy future for his daughter, but both he and his wife died of the sleeping sickness when Delana was 10. So the girl began working in the tavern from that early age. The dark-haired beauty was happy where she was, although she had often dreamed of returning home to see what had become of the boy she once loved. That was now impossible, however, as the village no longer existed. A jug of ale, please. As Will passed Delana a coin, Their eyes met. "Do I know you?" "That's funny. I was about to ask you the same thing. You remind me of someone I knew a long time ago." "Maybe I'm the same person." "Number, he's dead. His village was destroyed 10 years ago." Then Will noticed her bracelet. He had made it from animal hair when he was 9. "Don't you mean our village?" "Yes. It was where I used to live. Before your father realized that more people wanted carts in Galabus." "Your name is Delana, isn't it?" "Yes, but how do you know?" "I thought it was you. When I saw your bracelet, I became certain. I gave it to you the day you left home." "Will? Will Goldstone?" Will nodded. Delana leapt over the wooden counter and embraced her childhood sweetheart. Will was happier than he had been for a very long time. Chapter 5. The Execution. Summer became autumn, and the love between Will and Delana was the strongest that had ever been felt. So powerful were these feelings, Will's thirst for revenge no longer seemed so important. All he could think of was his future bride. The wedding preparations had all been made. The village square was filled with colorful decorations, and a huge supply of wine stood ready to flow between countless smiling lips. It was the night before the wedding. The next day, the couple would at long last share the name of Goldstone. In keeping with tradition, Will celebrated with the friends he had made while elsewhere. Delana celebrated with hers. Spirits were high in the tavern, as Delana's lifelong dream was about to come true. However, the cheers soon faded when the tavern doors swung open and 2 of de Drague's men entered. "Why such happiness? Is someone getting married?" Delana nodded nervously. "Well, I must say, you've picked a nice time of year for it. Isn't that right, Roji?" "Yeah." The tavern was as silent as a grave. For a moment, the men looked as if they were about to leave, and Delana breathed a sigh of relief. But they suddenly grabbed her, and she let out a cry. "What are you doing?" "Well, you know, marriage is a very big step. You'd agree, Roji?" "The biggest, Garn. And so, if you're going to take that step, it's best to be sure about your future husband." "Oh, I'm sure." "How can you be when you've not looked at the other possibilities?" "What do you mean?" "Well, for a start, there's our boss, your king. He's always had an eye for beauty. And the power to take it," Delana screamed as the men dragged her from the tavern. King de Drague stood alone in the center of his throne room. Dressed in studded black leather and a long cape, he was indeed a frightening figure, although right now, he was very bored. The doors to the throne room opened, and one of his men entered. "What is it, Garn?" "Why do you disturb me?" "I have a present for your majesty." "A present? It's not my birthday." "Well, I heard that you were bored, and anyway, you're the king. His Majesty can have a birthday whenever he wants." "Very well. What is this present?" "Bring her in, Roj." Delana was led into the dark, echoing throne room. "Oh, yes. Happy birthday to me indeed." He advanced upon the terrified girl. "What is your name, young lady?" Delana. Delana, a fitting name for such a beautiful creature. Now that you're within the walls of my dark fortress, tell me, Delana, is it how you imagined it to be? Worse. I suppose it could do with a woman's touch. And what of me? How do I make you feel? Delana could say nothing. Lost for words? Well, I know how you make me feel. Drake began stroking her hair, and she closed her eyes in terror and disgust. Finding new courage, Delana opened her eyes and spat in Drake's face. I'd sooner be dead than live a life with you. Drake, his face frozen with surprise, blinked his eyes. He wiped his face clean and smiled. Very well, my dear. Your wish is my command. Take her away, Raj. Delana was led quickly to an even less pleasant part of the fortress, while Drake walked over to Garn, who he struck with the back of his hand. What sort of present do you call that? The sun had risen, and as Will happily made his way to the village square, he saw that a large crowd had gathered. He put his hand on a stranger's shoulder and smiled. I didn't expect quite so many people at my wedding. We're not here for a wedding. It's a public execution. Will was horrified. An execution? Why would you come to watch such a thing? We had to. It's by royal command. Suddenly, a terrible scream rang out, and Will's blood ran cold. Something about the voice sounded familiar. He pushed his way to the front of the crowd and fell to his knees when he saw Delana, tied to a post with a sword through her heart. He began to shiver, and he cried like a wounded animal. His voice then became a tremendous howl of rage and agony. He looked around for a weapon with which to kill the executioner and guards. Just then, his headband began to throb, and he heard a voice in his head. It sounded like Kylan. Do not take your revenge yet. If you try, you will surely fail. Leave Galabas and walk north. Confused, Will touched the headband with his finger. If this is destiny, Kylan, I don't like it one bit.